Christmas, a time of giving of hope and sometimes unexpected miracles. But what if I told you that for one young girl, this Christmas was going to change everything? Not because of a shiny new toy or a festive feast, but because of one man's life-changing gesture. Imagine being a young girl struggling to survive in a world that feels like it's forgotten you, surrounded by the harsh realities of life where the holidays don't bring joy, just another reminder of what you don't have. Now imagine waking up on Christmas morning to find out that everything you knew, everything you thought was impossible, has suddenly changed. For Maya, a 12-year-old girl from a small overlooked neighborhood, this Christmas would be different. It wasn't about the presents she didn't receive, or the tree that stood bare in her living room. No, it was about the unexpected miracle that was about to walk into her life. This is the story of how one billionaire who had no reason to know her chose to change her life forever. A story of generosity of fate, and of how kindness can have a ripple effect that echoes through an entire community. But the truth is the way this billionaire came into Maya's life isn't something you'll hear often. The events that led to this moment aren't what you'd expect, and the impact of his actions went far beyond just one family. Today, we're going to take you on a journey that begins with one small but life-changing decision and ends with a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can change the world. What does it take for someone to go from barely surviving to having a future full of promise? What happens when a stranger steps in to make the impossible possible? Stay with us as we reveal how a billionaire's unexpected act of generosity transformed one young girl's life and the incredible ripple effect it created. But before we dive in, welcome to Craze TV, where we bring you stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the goodness in the world. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a heartwarming story like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the incredible story of how Christmas and one billionaire changed a poor black girl's life forever. Meet Maya, a bright, hopeful 12-year-old girl from a small, tight-knit community. Maya was the kind of girl who made an impression on everyone she met, even if she didn't have much. With her wide, hopeful eyes and an infectious smile, she had a way of lighting up a room, even on the darkest days. She wasn't like the other kids in her neighborhood, who seemed to have it all together. The latest clothes, the newest gadgets, the freedom to just be kids without worries. But Maya didn't need those things. What she had was her family, her dreams, and a relentless determination to keep going no matter how hard life got. She lived in a small house at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where you could hear the laughter of children playing in the streets and the faint hum of a busy world just beyond the block. But for Maya, the world outside her community always seemed a little too far away, a little too out of reach. The house wasn't much. There was no fancy furniture or extravagant decor. It was simple, functional, and held together by love from her mom and dad, who worked tirelessly to provide for her and her little brother. Even though the financial strain was constant, Maya knew her parents weren't rich. She knew the struggle it took for them to pay bills and keep food on the table. Every day her mom worked long hours at a local diner, and her dad did whatever odd jobs he could find, sometimes working at a construction site, sometimes fixing cars for neighbors. But no matter how hard they tried, it never seemed like enough. And while Maya understood that money was tight, she also understood the value of the things that couldn't be bought: love, hope, and the belief that better days were ahead. But despite all of that, Christmas was always hard. For Maya, Christmas wasn't about the shiny new toys or the pile of presents under the tree. There was no Christmas tree to decorate, no big dinner to look forward to, no stockings hung by the fireplace. There were just the small things, the handful of decorations they could afford, the meager meal her mom would manage to make, and the quiet moments spent together as a family. They made the best of it, of course, and Maya could always count on her parents to make her feel loved, no matter how little they had. Still, the holiday season was a constant reminder of what they didn't have. Maya watched other kids at school talk about the new bikes, the game consoles, and the trips they took during Christmas break. Her friends would come back from their vacations, their families' homes full of laughter, their living rooms filled with gifts. And Maya would smile, nodding along, trying to hide the disappointment that would creep into her heart. She didn't want to feel sorry for herself. She didn't want to be the girl who complained about not having the same things as everyone else. But it was hard, especially when Christmas came around, and the disparity seemed more glaring than ever. The presents were never the focus for Maya. She didn't ask for much. She didn't even expect much. It was the absence of something more that weighed on her heart. She yearned for the warmth of knowing that things would one day be different, that her family would one day have enough. She wanted to help her parents to ease their burdens, but at just 12 years old, there wasn't much she could do. Instead, she focused on school, hoping that through education, she could someday break free from the cycle of struggle that seemed to trap her family. But no matter how hard she tried or how much she dreamed, there were days when it felt like her hopes were slipping away. Those were the days when Christmas felt like an impossible dream, a reminder that no matter how much she wished for things to be better, the reality was always just a little bit out of reach. Still, Maya held on to the one thing that had never failed her dreams. Dreams of a better life, dreams of opportunities. She hadn't yet experienced dreams of a future where she could give her family everything they had always wanted. It was these dreams that kept her going. It was the belief that one day things would change. Even when everything else felt uncertain, Maya had her dreams, and that was all she needed to keep moving forward. The holidays were a tough reminder of what they didn't have, but it was also a time when Maya would look at her family, her parents' tired faces softened by their love for her, and know that no matter what they didn't have, they had each other. That in itself was something worth celebrating. And yet, in the back of her mind, Maya couldn't help but wonder, would this Christmas be different? Would there ever come a time when everything she dreamed about would finally come true? But then there's Elijah Monroe, a billionaire who made his fortune in tech and entrepreneurship. Elijah Monroe was a name known by many, especially in the world of business and technology. He was the kind of person who from the outside seemed to have everything: success, wealth, and the respect that came with being at the top of his field. Elijah had built his empire from the ground up, starting with nothing but a vision and an incredible work ethic. His rise to fame and fortune was a story that many admired, but few truly understood. His journey wasn't just about business acumen. It was about perseverance, long nights, and moments of failure that pushed him to greater heights. For Elijah, Christmas was a time to unwind. It was a holiday to be spent with family, enjoying the comforts that came with his success. The grand homes, the lavish dinners, and the extravagant gifts, these were the things he had grown used to. Each year, as December rolled around, Elijah would retreat to one of his multiple mansions, surrounded by loved ones with an abundance of food, laughter, and presents. Christmas for him was just another holiday, one to reflect on the achievements of the past year and to celebrate the success that came with it. It was a time to appreciate the fruits of his labor, to spoil his children with the gifts they wanted, and to show his appreciation for those who had supported him along the way. The contrast between his life and the lives of others was stark, and sometimes it made Elijah feel a little disconnected. While his family was surrounded by luxury, he was aware that not everyone shared the same kind of Christmas experience. He had heard stories of families struggling to make ends meet, of children who went without presents, and of people for whom Christmas wasn't about joy, but about surviving another year. Elijah always tried to keep those thoughts in the back of his mind, focusing instead on his own family's happiness during the holiday season. After all, it was the way of the world, wasn't it? Some people had more, others had less, and that was just how things worked. But little did he know, a story was unfolding in a small, quiet neighborhood, far from the luxurious mansions and festive celebrations he knew so well. A young girl named Maya, whose life had been shaped by struggle, was about to cross paths with him in the most unexpected way. Elijah Monroe had never heard of her, and she had never heard of him. Their worlds were as different as night and day, and yet fate had something entirely different in store. It wasn't as though Elijah had been searching for a cause to champion, nor was he thinking of ways to change someone's life. He had more than enough to focus on. But fate, as it often does, has a way of quietly weaving its threads when you least expect it. Sometimes those threads connect people in the most surprising ways. It started like any other Christmas season for Elijah, but as the holiday drew closer, he found himself thinking more about the less fortunate. Maybe it was the stories he'd seen in the media about people who had fallen through the cracks, or perhaps it was the increasing number of charity events and fundraisers that came with the season. Whatever the reason, Elijah found himself feeling restless. Despite the wealth that filled his home, there was a nagging feeling in his chest, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was something more he could do. He wasn't one to give up his time easily, but there was something different this year. As he sat at a charity gala, listening to the tales of families in need, one story in particular caught his attention. It wasn't the most tragic or the most heart-wrenching, but it stuck with him. A young girl named Maya, just 12 years old, who had spent her life in poverty, her future uncertain, and her hopes pinned on the dream that things could one day be better. Elijah had heard stories like this before, but this one resonated with him in a way he didn't fully understand. He didn't know Maya. He didn't know her family. But something inside him, something deep within him, made him feel like he needed to act. Without much thought, he made the decision. He would reach out to this family, offer them the support they needed, and change their lives in a way that would never be forgotten. And just like that, the life of a billionaire and the life of a young girl living in a modest neighborhood were about to intertwine. Elijah Monroe didn't know it yet, but he was about to become the answer to a prayer that Maya had never even asked for. A simple decision, one made out of compassion, or perhaps out of curiosity, was about to set a series of events in motion that would change everything. This wasn't a moment that anyone could have predicted. For Elijah, it was just another holiday, another Christmas to be spent with family. But for Maya, it was the beginning of something that would turn her world upside down. Neither of them knew it yet, but their lives were about to be forever changed by a simple act of kindness driven by fate. One Christmas Eve, Elijah Monroe found himself at one of the most prestigious charity galas in the city, surrounded by some of the most influential figures in business, philanthropy, and politics. The event was extravagant as expected. The grand ballroom was decorated in gold and silver, sparkling under the lights of massive chandeliers. There were speeches, there were performances, and of course there were donations, millions of dollars raised for various causes. But despite the glitz and glamour, Elijah's mind wasn't fully present in the room. As the CEO of a successful tech empire, he had attended numerous events like this, and it all began to feel a little routine. Yet there was something about this particular night that seemed to be different. As the evening went on, various stories of families in need were shared, each one more heart-wrenching than the last. The organizers had invited people from all walks of life to speak about their struggles, their dreams, and the things that had kept them going during times of hardship. Elijah had listened to stories like these before about the impoverished, the underserved, and those who lived without the privileges he often took for granted. He had donated generously, supported many initiatives, and even spent time visiting shelters and schools. But on this night, there was a particular story that struck him in a way that none of the others had. It was during a quiet moment, after a speech from a local social worker. She had introduced several families, but one in particular stood out. A young girl named Maya. The woman began by describing Maya's life. A 12-year-old girl raised in a small, tight-knit community on the outskirts of the city. Mia's family had struggled for years, living in a modest home that was too small for their needs. The little girl had always been full of energy, full of hope, despite the hardship surrounding her. Mia's parents, both hardworking but underpaid, did everything they could to make ends meet. Her father worked long hours doing manual labor, while her mother served food at a local diner. Yet despite their tireless efforts, the bills piled up and dreams of a better future often felt out of reach. Maya's story wasn't unlike the hundreds of others he had heard before, but this one, for reasons he couldn't immediately explain, moved him deeply. It was something about the way the woman described her. Maya wasn't just a name or a statistic. She was a little girl who had not asked for much in life. She only wanted the chance to escape the poverty she had been born into, the chance to do something greater with her life. The story continued, painting a picture of a young girl who had big dreams, but even bigger obstacles. Maya had never experienced the luxury of a Christmas where presents were overflowing under the tree. For her, the holidays were always a reminder of how little her family could afford. Yet Maya never let this stop her. She worked hard in school, did her best to help at home, and remained hopeful that one day things would change. Elijah found himself entranced, listening to the details of her life. The words about her dreams and determination echoed in his mind. He had heard similar stories countless times before, but something about Maya's optimism, her resilience despite the odds, felt personal to him. There was an innocence and strength in her story that seemed to touch something deep inside of him. It reminded him of his own beginnings, of the times he had struggled, of the hunger for success that had kept him going despite feeling like the world had overlooked him. As the speech ended, the crowd applauded, but Elijah remained still. His mind kept circling back to that name, Maya. Her image, her story stayed with him long after the gala continued. He glanced around the room, noticing the sea of lavish donations and large checks being written for various charities. While important, Elijah couldn't shake the feeling that none of this was quite as impactful as he had once thought. It was all too easy to write a check and move on. What did it really mean to help? How could someone like him make a real difference? Maya's face, though unseen by him, lingered in his thoughts. He thought of her sitting in a small, dimly lit room, wondering if this Christmas would be like the others another year, where dreams felt just a little too far away. He wondered if in the middle of the holiday season, when everyone else seemed to be celebrating, she was still thinking of the things she couldn't afford, the things she wished for that always felt just out of reach. And then it hit him. He didn't just want to make a donation. He didn't just want to send money to another cause. He wanted to change someone's life in a way that was personal, in a way that had real, lasting impact. He wanted to do something that wasn't just about financial assistance, but about giving someone the opportunity to change their future, something bigger than a holiday charity drive. That night, Elijah made a decision that would forever alter the course of Maya's life. He didn't know how he would do it yet, or what form it would take, but he was certain of one thing: he had to do something for her. He wanted to give her a chance to achieve the dreams she had worked so hard for, a chance to go beyond the limits her circumstances had imposed on her. The next morning, Elijah set the wheels in motion. He contacted his personal assistant and instructed them to track down the details of Maya's family, their story, and the best way to reach out to them. He wanted to make sure he understood everything about her situation. This wasn't about a quick fix or a temporary solution. This was about making a meaningful difference, one that could shift the course of her future forever. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. Maya wasn't just another charity case. She wasn't just another face in a crowd of people who needed help. She was someone with potential, someone whose life could be transformed if only given the opportunity. And he, with his resources and influence, had the power to give her that opportunity. Moved by her story and determined to do something that would truly make a difference, Elijah Monroe began to make plans. It wasn't just about giving her a gift for Christmas. It was about giving her the gift of a future, one where the obstacles she had been born into didn't define her. One where, for the first time, the world would open up to her in ways she had never imagined. The next morning, Maya's world shifted. It was just like any other day at first. The early morning sun peeked through the small curtains in her room, casting a soft golden light over the modest furnishings. The faint sounds of the neighborhood slowly came to life outside, the distant hum of traffic, the soft chatter of neighbors greeting each other, and the occasional bark of a dog. Maya had already started her morning routine, helping her mom with the dishes and getting ready for school. But something was different that day. As she stood at the sink, looking out the window, she noticed something unusual: a large package sitting on the doorstep. It was far too big to be a typical delivery. At first she thought it was a mistake, maybe for a neighbor, but the package was addressed to her family. Curious, she quickly dried her hands and rushed to the door. Her heart raced as she bent down to lift the heavy box. She wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe it was a donation, a care package, or some sort of holiday surprise from one of the local charities her mom had worked with. She had no idea who could be sending something like this, but as she brought the package inside, her excitement grew. The box was large, wrapped in a clean, glossy paper, with a simple but elegant ribbon tied neatly around it. Maya felt a sense of wonder and disbelief. She had never received anything like this before. Her hands trembled as she untied the ribbon and carefully peeled away the wrapping. When the last piece of paper came off, she was left with a pristine white box. It wasn't particularly flashy, but there was something about it that felt significant. Something about this gift seemed different. She opened the box, lifting the lid to reveal the contents inside. Her eyes went wide when she saw what lay within: a letter, an envelope, and beneath them, a set of documents and a few keys. The note, written in neat handwriting, was the first thing Mia pulled out. Dear Matt, I know you don't know me, but I've heard about your story. I wanted to make sure that this Christmas was different for you and your family. You have a bright future ahead of you, and I believe in the power of education and opportunity. This gift is just the beginning. I've arranged for you to receive a full scholarship for your education from elementary all the way through college. You never need to worry about school costs again. I've also provided for a new home for your family, one that will allow you to grow and have the space you deserve. And I've ensured that financial support is in place so that your family never has to struggle with the basics again. I hope this allows you to dream even bigger than you already do. You deserve every opportunity to succeed, Maya. Warm regards, Elijah Monroe. Maya's hands froze, her heart skipping a beat. She read the note again, unable to comprehend fully what it meant. It was as if her mind couldn't quite make the connection. This couldn't be real, but it was. The words, the promises, the opportunity, all felt too much to grasp at once. She read the note a third time, this time slowly letting each word sink in. Full scholarship for my education, a new home for my family, financial support, so we never have to worry again. Maya could hardly believe it. She thought she had to be dreaming. No one had ever done anything like this for her or for her family. The thought of a scholarship was overwhelming. Education had always been the one thing she believed could lift her out of poverty, and now it was within her reach thanks to someone she had never met. Her eyes then moved to the envelope, which she opened with shaking hands. Inside, there were documents, official ones, all confirming what the letter had said. A scholarship had been set up in her name. Maya could feel her chest tightening as she read the words on the page. She had always hoped for a chance to attend a great school, to learn to grow, but she never thought it would actually happen. She was used to making do with what she had, attending a local school with limited resources. But now her education would be limitless, something she had only ever dreamed of. And then beneath the documents, she found the set of keys. At first, she wasn't sure what they were for, but when she saw the words printed on a small card, her breath caught in her throat. A new home for the family of Maya. It was too much. Maya couldn't process it all at once. Her mother, who had been struggling to keep the bills paid and food on the table, could now breathe easier. Her father, who had been working multiple jobs just to make ends meet, would no longer have to carry the weight of their financial struggles alone. A new home. A real home. Not the small, cramped space they had barely been able to afford. A place where they could be comfortable, where they could have more room to grow as a family. The idea of it was almost surreal. Mia sat down slowly on the floor, clutching the documents and keys to her chest. Her mind raced, but her heart was filled with something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. This was the kind of hope she had held on to for so many years, the kind of hope she had clung to when everything seemed impossible. But now, it wasn't just hope. It was reality. She stood up, still holding the keys, and rushed to find her mom. Her voice trembled as she called for her, not sure if she was ready to share this incredible news. Her mom appeared in the doorway, looking confused but concerned. Maya, what's going on? Her mom asked, noticing the look of disbelief on her daughter's face. I don't know how to explain this," Miss stammered, showing her the letter and documents. Someone sent us all of this." She handed her mom the keys, the scholarship documents, and the letter. Her mother looked down at them, eyes wide with shock. When she read the letter, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to pure joy. Tears welled up in her eyes as she hugged Maya tightly, unable to believe what she was reading. For the first time in a long while, Maya saw her mom cry. But these weren't tears of worry or sadness. These were tears of relief, of happiness, of gratitude. Together, they stood there, holding on to the gifts that would forever change their lives: a scholarship, a new home, and a future that had just become brighter than they could have ever imagined. Maya couldn't believe her eyes. She sat on the floor, the notes, the documents, and the keys still scattered in front of her, as if the very act of touching them might make them disappear. Her heart raced as she reread the letter, hoping that somehow the words would sink in deeper, that the enormity of what had just happened would become clearer. But it was still hard to grasp, hard to believe that this was real. She had spent most of her life simply surviving, trying to get by, living in a world where the barriers seemed insurmountable. She had learned to be resilient, to push through every obstacle that came her way. But no one had ever handed her an opportunity like this, not like this. The scholarship, the new home, the financial support, it all felt like something out of a dream. For a girl who had always dreamed of a better life, of a future where she wasn't shackled by the weight of poverty, this was the moment where her dreams began to take shape. But even more than that, it was a recognition. She had been seen. Someone, a complete stranger, had noticed her struggle, her efforts, and her potential. Someone had believed in her. That was a feeling Maya had never experienced before. Her entire life had been a fight to be noticed, to be heard. For so long it had seemed like the world only acknowledged her because of her circumstances. But now, in the blink of an eye, the world had shifted. This wasn't just a gift. It was a chance, a real chance, to escape the struggles that had defined her young life. The weight of that realization sank in slowly but powerfully. She wasn't just receiving help, she was being offered an opportunity to change the course of everything, to redefine what her future could look like. The walls that had kept her trapped in that small home and that small neighborhood for so long were now beginning to crumble away. The dream of going to college, of building a career, of living a life of possibility was no longer just a fantasy. It was something she could reach for, something that could be hers. She thought about the struggles of the past, the long nights where she and her family barely had enough to eat, the constant fear of what might happen if her parents couldn't pay the bills, the crushing weight of seeing classmates with things she could only dream of. There had always been that invisible line between her and the life she wanted, a line that seemed impossible to cross. But now, with the promise of an education, of stability, and of a future free from financial anxiety, that line felt closer than ever before. It wasn't some distant, unattainable goal. It was right in front of her, and that wasn't just a gift, it was a promise. A promise that no matter where you come from, dreams are still worth chasing. Maya had always believed in the power of dreams. Even when everything around her suggested that they were impossible, she had held on to that small flicker of hope. She had always told herself that if she worked hard enough, if she stayed determined, maybe one day things would change. But even with all the effort in the world, often felt like no one was listening. No one could see past the label of poor that had been placed on her. It wasn't just the lack of resources that weighed on her. It was the feeling that no one cared enough to even notice her potential. But now, with that letter in her hand, with the scholarship and the new home, that promise wasn't just an abstract idea. It was a tangible, undeniable truth. She realized that this wasn't just about the money or the material things that had been provided to her family. It was about something far bigger. It was about the belief that anyone, no matter their circumstances, could rise above them if given the chance. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, and it was more than she had ever imagined. For so long, Maya had been fighting alone, but now she realized she didn't have to. She had a support system. She had a future. Her dreams were not some far-off wish, they were real, and they were hers to pursue. The education she had always dreamed of was now within her grasp. And with that, the doors to a future filled with possibilities were opening wide. Her path, once so narrow and limited, had suddenly widened in a way she had never thought possible. The idea of a new home seemed like something out of a fairy tale. She thought about the small, cramped apartment she and her family had lived in, the one where they had barely enough space to move, let alone dream. Now, the thought of a home that would be theirs, a place where they could finally feel comfortable and safe, filled her with a sense of peace she had never known. It wasn't just the physical space that mattered, it was the emotional space that came with it. The feeling of being free from constant worry, free from the crushing weight of financial insecurity. As she sat there holding the letter close to her chest, Maya thought about her family. She thought about her mother, who had always worked so hard, who had sacrificed so much for Maya's sake. She thought about her father, who had spent his life laboring just to keep them afloat. For the first time, Maya realized that this wasn't just a chance for her. It was a chance for all of them. The future was no longer uncertain. The struggles of the past, the struggles of survival, would be replaced by something else, something hopeful, something real. Maya smiled, a sense of joy blooming in her chest. It wasn't just about the scholarship, or the house, or the financial support. It was about the freedom to dream again. For the first time, she could see a future that wasn't defined by scarcity, a future that was wide open, full of opportunity. It was a promise not just from Elijah Monroe, but from life itself, that dreams, no matter how big or small, were worth chasing. And now Maya was ready to chase hers. But it wasn't just Maya's life that changed. The ripple effect of Elijah's kindness touched the entire community in ways no one could have anticipated. The news of Maya's incredible transformation spread quickly, and it didn't take long for people to start talking. At first, it was just whispers, the kind of stories that seem almost too good to be true. But soon the story was everywhere, in the local papers, on social media, and even in the conversations of neighbors and strangers alike. The small, tight-knit community that had always known struggle was now buzzing with a newfound sense of possibility. People couldn't stop talking about Maya's scholarship, her new home, and the fact that someone, a billionaire no less, had stepped in to make it all happen. It seemed like the kind of thing you only hear about in movies or fairy tales. But it was real, it was happening, and it was changing everything. As the story spread, it sparked something deeper in the hearts of the people who heard it. It was more than just awe, it was inspiration. People began to realize that if one person could make such a huge difference in the life of someone like Maya, maybe they could make a difference too. The community had always been tight-knit, but the generosity shown by Elijah Monroe became a catalyst for something bigger. The acts of kindness that followed were both small and large, but they all carried the same message, that you don't have to be a billionaire to change lives. Local businesses started offering scholarships to students in need, eager to give back to the community that had supported them for years. Nonprofits, inspired by the story, ramped up their efforts to reach out to struggling families, offering food, clothes, and even tutoring services to help students like Maya. It wasn't just about material gifts, it was about hope. The story of Maya's transformation reminded everyone that the smallest act of kindness, whether it was donating a few dollars, giving someone a ride, or offering a listening ear, could have a far-reaching impact. Maya's story also prompted a wave of financial support that wasn't just directed at her. People from all walks of life began giving what they could to local charities, to students who needed school supplies, to families who were struggling to put food on the table. The story of Elijah's generosity served as a reminder that in a world that often feels divided and uncertain, kindness could be the glue that held everything together. It was amazing to see how quickly the community came together, realizing that a single act of compassion could inspire so much more. Teachers began offering free tutoring sessions to students who couldn't afford extra help, and neighbors who had the means started offering assistance to those in need. Even the younger generation, inspired by Maya's story, began to give back in their own ways, volunteering at food banks, cleaning up the local park, and organizing charity drives. Maya's life had changed forever, but so had the lives of the people around her. Her story reminded everyone that kindness has a power far beyond what we can see, that even the smallest acts of generosity can ripple outward and create a tidal wave of change. It was a cycle that began with Elijah Monroe's decision to help one young girl, but it didn't end there. It sparked a movement, a shift in perspective, and a renewed sense of hope for an entire community. And in the end, that was the real gift. Christmas is a time of miracles, of magic, of moments that remind us of what's truly important. For Maya, that Christmas was more than just a holiday. It was the start of a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, possibility, and a future she had never dreamed was possible. Elijah Monroe's simple yet profound act of kindness not only transformed Maya's life, but sparked a wave of generosity that rippled through her entire community. It's a reminder that no matter where we come from, dreams are worth chasing. And sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in us, to make the impossible possible. What would you do if you had the power to change someone's life? It's a question many of us have asked ourselves at some point, wondering what it would be like to have the ability to truly make a difference in someone else's world. In a world filled with challenges, it can sometimes feel like the problems are too big, the issues too overwhelming. But what if all it takes is one moment of kindness, one small gesture to turn someone's life around? Sometimes it only takes one act of decision, a word, a helping hand, to make a world of difference. When we look at stories like Mia's, it's easy to see how a single act of generosity can spark a transformation. Elijah Monroe didn't set out to change the course of an entire community, but by taking the time to listen, to see beyond the surface, and to offer his help, he gave Maya the chance to pursue her dreams. His kindness didn't just impact her. It had a ripple effect, touching everyone around her, inspiring people to do the same, to reach out and help in whatever way they could. It shows us that it doesn't take grand gestures or large sums of money to make a difference. Sometimes the smallest acts can have the biggest impact. A single moment of kindness, when shared with others, can create an unstoppable wave of positive change. It's easy to think that our actions are too small to matter, that we can't possibly make a real difference. But if we take a moment to look around, we'll see that we all have the power to impact the lives of others. Whether it's offering a smile to a stranger, volunteering our time, or sharing our resources, every small act adds up. What if we all took just a little bit of time every day to make someone's life better, to make them feel seen, valued, and supported? The change we could create together would be incredible. Share this story and let it remind us all that we have the ability to spread kindness, not just at Christmas, but every day. The holiday season is often a time of reflection and generosity, but kindness doesn't have to be reserved for just one time of year. It's something we can carry with us every day, in every interaction. We have the power to brighten someone's day, to change the direction of someone's life with a simple act of compassion. Whether it's helping a neighbor in need, encouraging a friend, or simply listening to someone who feels unheard, we all have the ability to make a difference. So as we reflect on Maya's story, let's remember that kindness doesn't require grand gestures. It just requires a willingness to act, to step in when we see someone in need, and to offer whatever help we can. It's these small, thoughtful moments that add up and create a lasting impact. If we all take the time to be kind, we can change the world one moment at a time. Thank you for watching this heartwarming story. If it inspired you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of kindness, hope, and life-changing moments. Let's keep spreading the magic of Christmas all year round.